All right. Let's talk about Saturday. Let's talk about Saturday since I've got my web browser open. In the chat window, if you want to join this Saturday review session, that will be this Saturday. It's going to start at 8 a.m., the same time that we're starting this whole entire week, but we will be in there for maybe 3 hours. And all I'm going to be doing is a high-level review of each domain, but just topics that I know that the majority of people get hit on. You have to register for that Saturday review session. Even though you're in this class this week, if you want to attend the Saturday review session this Saturday, you got to click on that link. Then you got to put in your first name, last name, your email, and hit register. And they will send you another Zoom session for Saturday. Now, listen, you do not have to attend this Saturday review session. Now, it's the only one that they have in there, but they will pop up new dates as the weeks and all that go on. They typically will do 1 or 2 weeks in the little drop down at a time. Okay. My thing is this. I would, and you can attend however many you want. I don't care. Okay. I recommend that whenever you decide to take the exam, so let's say you're going to take it a month from now, jump into the Saturday review session. That is the Saturday before you take the exam, just to get that refresher. Okay, so you don't have to attend this Saturday, but if you want to, you got to go and register, and the link is in the chat window. All right. Now, you guys are ready. It's already been paid for. You don't have to pay anything extra. It's part of the class. So, but you got to register for it. You got to register for that.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Prerna. Nice to meet all of you and you as well. I just had a quick question.
Sure.
I am planning to take the exam right after this week, like on Monday of next week. So I was
Okay.
just wondering, do you like give recommendations on what do we like work on after the sessions then? Like, you
Sure.
know, I'm talking in terms of like, I mean, in layman terms, like homework or like practice sessions or
Yeah,
like
I'm
practice.
going to have homework for you guys.
Okay, perfect. I just
Yep.
wanted to get
Absolutely.
yeah.
Now, let me ask you this. So you're wanting to take it this Monday. Training camp has training camp sent you the email saying, hey, we owe
Yeah.
you a voucher. You need to respond back
Yeah.
to this. Have you done all of that?
Yeah. I've gotten myself registered and
Oh, okay. So you're
Monday
already
was
registered for this Monday?
yeah.
Okay, good to
Yeah,
go. All
correct,
right,
correct.
then cool.
Yeah.
I was going to say, if you didn't do that beforehand, you might not be able to get in on Monday.
Yeah, they have very, very less availability. I couldn't
Okay.
get like anything other than Monday. So I already did all that and I just wanted to
Okay,
know like,
cool.
you know,
All
the
right.
extra class. Thank
Okay, very good.
Can I
Very
jump in
good.
and ask something real quick?
Sure.
You say how long did it take to hear back from them regarding the voucher? Because I did send out an email. I'm waiting to get a response back so I can then set up a exam date. Because I was hoping to do it Saturday right after the review, but it's seeming like it's not possible
When did you email them?
over the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably not going to get back with you on the weekend. So since it's now Monday, they'll probably by lunchtime, you'll receive an email from them.
And okay, I just want to know how like realistic it is potentially. I guess I don't know the schedule or the availability, but to
Yeah,
to take it right after the
so
review.
it all depends on where you live. So for example, let's say here in Houston, if I were to request the voucher now and then try to schedule the exam in Houston for this coming Monday, there's only certain centers because you got to go in and take the exam. Okay. But there's only certain centers that actually do it. It's a 3-hour exam and they can only take so many students per day. I doubt very seriously being in the Houston area, if I wanted to take it on, a week from today, that there would be a spot. So it depends on where you live. And, each test center is going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, that
Understood.
happened to me too, because I live in Austin. They did not have so much availability. I
Yeah,
could
and
only get
Austin's
Monday.
another one. If you live in a big metroplex area, yeah, the availability's it's going to be hit or miss.
Okay, thank you.
Joe, another question. In your experience, is it better to take the exam right after the course, or do most
Yes.
people? Okay.
It is, but we're going to talk about all this throughout the week, especially on Friday. But I'm going to tell you this: everybody's going to be a little different. Okay. I think if you have waited more than 2 months after this class to take the exam, you've waited way too long. Okay, so that's my thing. Now, all the other classes that I teach, I could tell you exactly when to go and take it. This one is a little bit different, okay, because the knowledge that we're going to learn in class, yeah, that's one thing. Knowing how to take the exam, that's different. And that's why I'm going to spend a lot of time this week on, all right, what's that process? How do we think when we go and take the exam? How do we have to approach the exam? Man, I say this, Mateo, for the majority of my folks, within a week, when you're done with this class, try to get in there and take the exam within a week. Because folks, I'm going to be doing some silly stuff throughout class. I'm going to be giving you some really dumb mnemonics and all that, but you'll see why. Okay. You'll see why. It's just little memory triggers. Ricardo, no matter the experience. Yeah, man, Ricardo, now I'm older. I've had kids straight out of college that has no experience whatsoever that have gone in and knocked this exam out. And here's the reason why they were successful. They did not have the bad habits, that we do throughout our careers. Folks, the way that we do things at work's probably not the way it should be done, So they don't have those bad habits that they lean on. They're not very technical, so they can't lean on that. Oh, as a techie, this is what I would do. That's what's going to bite most of you in the rear end because you're not a techie on this exam. But once I go over my secret sauce, which I'm going to go over here in just a minute, they can grasp it a lot better because they don't have all that techiness inside of them. Are you understand what I'm saying? Okay, we're here, we fix problems. That's what we like to do, but you cannot do that on this exam. Okay, so is it good to have experience? Absolutely, but that could also bite you in the rear end depending on how techy you are. Okay, all right, so let's talk about our class schedule. Now, folks, these are in the Central Time Zone. Since I'm in the Central Time Zone, it's in the Central Time Zone. We're going to start at 8 a.m. every morning, and we're going to go till 12. We're going to take a 1-hour lunch break between 12 and 1. We're going to start back at 1 p.m., and to keep it safe, we're going to end around 6 p.m.-ish. Mateo, this is what I mean by that. Typically, we're going to get done about 5 o'clock Central Time. Okay? The only day that I might go over a little bit is today, is Monday. But hold on, my ears went off this for a second. So, but very seldom do I go to 6 p.m. Okay, I like to do 4 hours in the morning, 4 hours in the afternoon, and I cut it off. Just because most adult learners, after that 8 hours of being in class, you just, it's like your brain shuts off. But I throw on that 6 p.m. just in case. I might have a lot of questions and whatnot, but I will try to get everybody out of here each day at around 5 p.m. Central, okay? But I'm throwing 6 p.m. just in case I go over. I don't want somebody, Joe, you said, yeah, no, I'm the instructor. It's, you're in my playground. Now, let me tell you about Friday, though. Let me tell you about Friday. Friday's going to be a little bit different. If you want to make plans for Friday, and I highly recommend, you make plans for Friday, go and chill out, go and have dinner with the family or with some friends or whatever, and kind of, relax a little bit. But on Friday, I will be done Friday by around 4 p.m. Central on Friday. Okay? Now, after class, you need to do your studying. I'm going to give you homework questions. I'll go over what those are later on today at the very end of the day. I'm going to give you a link to my Proton Drive, but we're going to go over that at the very end of the day. But you're going to have homework questions. All right, folks, practice test questions. We love practice test questions. All right. So before I leave this slide, folks, oh, and by the way, we will take breaks at the top of the hour every hour. They're going to be either 5-minute breaks or they're going to be a 10-minute break. I will let you know when that time comes. Now, whenever I say that we're going to start at 8 a.m. or after lunch, when I'm going to start at 1 p.m., I am a Marine. My philosophy is early is on time is late. If you were with me before I started, you saw me at 8 a.m. Central. I'm very punctual. Okay. We don't have a lot of time. So at 8 a.m., I'm rocking and rolling. At 1 p.m. after lunch, I'm rocking and rolling. All right. Now, at the very end of the day, when you're doing your study, and make sure that, you're staying hydrated, you're eating some good, healthy brain food, maybe lay off the Crown Peach for the week, even though you're going to hear me talk about it all week long. But, do stuff that's good for your body. All right. Before I move on to the next topic, which is going to be some basic stuff about the test, does anybody have any questions for me?
Yes, one more thing.
Sure.
I was under the impression that when I took my CH and I was taking it virtually with a proctor from home, I was
Yep.
under the impression that this was the same thing. It's not,
Oh,
right?
no. Nope. You got to go into Pearson VUE. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. You have to go in. It's one of the only few certification bodies that does not do virtual. You have to go into their center and you have to take it.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. So let's talk about some basics about the exam. Now, this is just the basics that I want you to keep in mind throughout this week. On Friday, after we get done with Domain 8, I'm going to go a little bit more into detail about when you get to Pearson VUE, the do's and the don'ts and all that. I'm going to set up your expectation. So this exam, you have up to 3 hours to take the exam. So when question 1 hits, you got up to 3 hours to take the exam. Now, this exam is adaptive. Now, folks, I absolutely hate, and I don't like to use that word hate, but I hate the word adaptive. I don't like talking about it, but you need to know what it is, okay? It's going to play mind games with you is what's going to happen, but I don't want you to let it play mind games with you. But here's what the word adaptive is. So, Mikhail, when you were doing your CEH, all right, and you clicked an answer and it went to the next answer, and you're like, oh, I'm going to go back to that previous question. I'm going to change my answer. You can't do that on this exam. Once you select your answer and you click next, that's it. You cannot go back to any previous questions. That's it. You'll never see it again. You cannot mark anything for review. That is it. So this is what's going to happen. Remember, you got up to 3 hours. Before you click next, a lot of you are going to be like, oh, let me reread everything one more time. And you're going to start chewing into your time. Okay, so you have to keep that in mind. Now, the other part of adaptive, which is the one I really don't like, is this. If you get that question wrong, and by the way, folks, they are not going to let you know. There's no metrics, no nothing. They're not going to let you know if you got it right or wrong. You're going to feel like you're going to be getting a lot of stuff wrong, okay? But I'll get to that here shortly, okay? So if you get that question wrong, at some point, they're going to give you more questions that revolves around that domain or those domains. Now, one question can span multiple domains, okay? And that's going to play mind games with you. And I don't want it to play mind games with you. Now, within those 3 hours, you're going to have a minimum of 100 questions. But if you do, because you got to get 70% correct overall to pass the exam. If by question 100 you do not meet that 70% correct overall, it will spill you over to question 101 up to a possibility of 150. And it's okay if that happens. I just don't want you guys to be negative. Now, within the first 100 questions, there are 25 beta questions. Those beta questions do not count towards your score or against your score. They say they're in there to test them out, but listen, folks, listen to me very, very, very carefully. I promise you, Melissa, I promise you, even though I see that you got Mel on your thing, so Mel, I promise you, you're going to see some stuff on this exam that we never talked about. If you're like, the flux capacitor, what are they talking about? A flux capacitor? Doc and, Marty from Back to the Future? What's happening here? Don't freak out. Now, let's go back to the word adaptive there. Here's what I get from a lot of students, okay? Joe, I passed the exam. And I'm like, congratulations, but I don't get it. I had like 20 questions on cryptography, but I don't get it. I thought if I was getting them right that they would move on, but I had at least 20 questions on cryptography, or I had at least 15 to 20 questions on SOC reports, or I had, 15 to 20 questions on, federated identities, or whatever topic you want to throw up. But I passed. I don't get it. I thought that if I got it correct, they would just start moving on. And I'm like, were a majority of those questions in the first 100 questions? Oh, yeah, they were. Yeah, almost all of them were beta questions. That's why I don't like talking about that word adaptive, because people know what that word adaptive is, but then they start pounding you on the exam on one topic, just pound, 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 pound. And you want to go and change your tactics, and you're like, oh man, I'm getting these wrong. They keep on asking me about these questions. I need to change my tactics. Don't. What I'm going to teach you this week, that's what you're going to stick with. Because almost all of those that you're getting pounded on could have been all beta questions. Folks, they're going to try to play mind games with you. Bundle up that negativity and push it aside. All right? Now, when you register, this is very important. When you register for the exam, you need to register with your legal first and last name, whatever is on your government issued ID. So let me give you an example. Let's say that my official legal name was Joseph Barnes, and I signed up for the exam as Joe Barnes. And whenever I go into Pearson VUE, you're going to have to bring 2 forms of ID. When you show them your 2 forms of ID, if the ID says Joseph Barnes and they look at their sheet of paper and it says Joe Barnes, they're going to hand you the ID and say, sorry, your first name does not match up. We cannot allow you to take the exam. And that's about $750 down the drain. Okay, so make sure when you sign up for the exam, you sign up with your legal first and last name, whatever is on your government issued ID. Does anybody have any questions on that? All right, so I just want everybody to keep that in mind throughout this week. Again, on Friday, after we get done with Domain 8 on Friday, I'm just going to have a conversation with you and talk more about Pearson VUE, what to do to, from that Friday on to prepare yourself for the exam. I'm also going to recommend books, websites, practice test vendors, all sorts of good stuff, okay? If anybody in here is taking their exam, Parina, I know that you said you're going to be taking it on Monday. So do me a favor. Shoot me an email and let me know that. So shoot me an email real quick, if you would, and let me know the day and the time that you're taking your exam.
Of course, Joe. I'll do that.
Can you do that? So
Yeah.
if you would do that like today, I would appreciate it.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. To this one, right? Crownpeach.com.
Yeah, Joe at crownpeach.com.
Okay,
Yep.
I'll do that. Thank you.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you. So I will talk more about details about Pearson VUE and whatnot, logistics, on Friday. All right, that way it's kind of fresh in your head after we get done with class on Friday. What I want to go over now is, again, folks, knowing the information, this Mimeo, the courseware that we're going to do, this little workbook that we're going to do, you can memorize this word for word. You can go and take the official courseware curriculum and memorize it word for word. let's say you had a photographic memory and easily fail the exam. You have to know how to take the exam. So what I'm about to go over is my secret sauce. Now, this is not in your memo, but I'm going to give this to you at the very end of today. So I don't want you guys writing all this stuff down because there's a lot of information, but I'm going to give you this document actually every single day in my Proton Drive. But at the end of today, I'm going to tell you what I want you to do with it. So let's go over my secret sauce. This is going to be the hardest thing that I get to teach you this week, is how to implement it. So this is how you're going to attack the questions. I like to call it the secret sauce. There's going to be 3 rules in this class and on this exam. Rule number 1 is people's safety. Human life, human safety comes first. All right, so let me kind of give you an example of that. Let's say that you get a question that says that you're about to implement a unified threat management and a UTM, which now the new word for it is like a next-gen firewall. And they ask you, what's the first thing that you're going to do? You know, and they're all getting techie. And I hope everybody knows that on a firewall, the default ingress policy, which means coming into you, is deny all on every firewall. But they start getting real techie and they're going to say, what's the first thing that you want to do? And I have an answer that says, make sure that your people are safe and free of harm. You better pick that answer. But Joe, what does that have to do with installing a firewall? Well, because you're going to see here in just a little bit, ISC Square Code of Ethics, that's their first thing. It's not a question about the techie, it's do you know ethics? Number 2, be ethical. Anything and everything that we do, be ethical, follow the laws. Number 3, rule 3 is the continuity of the business. What that means is keep that business up and running, but be profitable. They're talking about make that money. Why have a business if we're not making money? But we need to do that in a cost-effective manner. Next, almost every question that's going to be on the exam is going to revolve around the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. You need to know, all right, well, I see this word. Where does this fall up underneath the CIA triad? I see this. I'm going to be going through all that throughout this week. Next, read your answers first. I do not want you to read the question first. And some of you, when you start trying that this strategy this evening when you do your homework, you're going to be like, oh man, this is weird. But if you stick with it, by the end of the class, you're going to be like, oh, I get it. I know why. Here's what's going to happen. If you do that, there's a couple of reasons why. Number 1 is the next bullet point. I don't want you to read the question and create a narrative. What that means is don't add something if they don't specifically bring it in. So for example, I love going to the beach. Okay. Even though I live on a lake, we got a beach area. I love going to the beach. If I'm in my car and I'm driving to the beach and I get a flat tire, am I still going to be able to get to the beach in my car? The answer to that is no, I'm not. But here's where a lot of people will bring a narrative in. But Joe, why don't you go and swap that flat tire out with your spare tire? I didn't tell you that I had a spare tire. Don't create a narrative. Are you guys kind of catching what's happening here? Don't create a narrative. Now, and here's another one where it says, if it's not always true, it's wrong. Folks, does every vehicle that's out on the road have a spare tire? Nope. My car doesn't. My car didn't come with a spare tire. Actually, has anybody bought a brand new car lately? If you bought a brand new car, chances are it doesn't come with a spare tire. They are now charging you extra if you want the spare tire. And I'm like, you cheap guys. But my car does not have a spare tire. There's no place to put a spare tire in the car that I drive. Don't create a narrative. Another reason why I want you to read the answers first is if you're truly understanding this secret sauce and the basics on these concepts, here's what you're going to be able to do. On this exam, you're going to be able to get rid of at least 2 answers right off of the bat before you even read the question. Okay? Next, your mindset needs to be like a manager, consultant, or an advisor. All right, folks, everybody needs to pay attention to the next statement. You are not a techie for this exam. This is the one that gets most of my students. My students that do fail the exam on the first time, that's the one that bites them in the rear end. And here's the reason why. Listen to me. Here's the reason why. I bet most of you in here, we're very techie-minded people. We want to fix the problem because that's what we do. And I'm telling you, don't do that. But they will have a correct answer for that question that is the techie answer that fixes the problem for that question. And you're like, oh man, there it is right there. This is easy. But you're getting it wrong because you're not a tech. You're a manager. Managers don't fix the problem. Are you guys picking up what I'm putting down? Okay, so this is what you have to do. I promise you, listen, I'm not saying this to scare people. If I've got very techie people in here and you truly listen to me, you're going to feel like you're failing the exam because you're doing the opposite of what you would do in the real world. And I'm telling you, don't fix the problem. Get rid of that answer and it's going to feel like we're doing something wrong because we are used to fixing problems. Use that as a positive. When you read the answers, is there one in here that is the techie answer? If so, get rid of it. Did you just fix a problem? If so, get rid of it. Use that as a positive before you hit next. Remember, you can't go back. Ask yourself, did I just fix the problem? And if the answer to that is yes, I did, get rid of that answer and reevaluate it. We don't fix problems. We want to make sure the process gets fixed by suggesting solutions. We want long-term solutions, not short-term fixes. Bake security in, don't bolt it on. Next, this is to help you out with the answers. Be very mindful of very specific answers. Like if they say you'll always use AES 256-bit symmetrical encryption. No, you won't. No, you won't, even though it is the strongest form of symmetrical encryption. No, you won't. Even though it's the strongest, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best. What system is it on? Can the system handle it? And not only that, rule number 2, follow the law. This exam is international. There are countries where it is illegal to use strong encryption. And you cannot assume, oh, I'm in the US, we can use AES 256-bit encryption. No, do not assume that. So I like broad general answers, where if you're reading the answers and you see a broad general answer that the other 3 answers can fit inside, pick that broad general answer. If you've never heard of it or if it sounds like it was made up, get rid of it. Again, if they start talking about a flux capacitor, what? If that answer is not always true across the board, not, why, my job, we do it this way. Not, get rid of that nonsense. It's wrong. Get rid of it. You need to think and answer like a manager, consultant, or an advisor. However, we are going to get into the techie stuff. You do need to understand like a technician, but don't answer as a tech. You got to answer like a manager. But folks, you got to read like a lawyer. This is a straight up reading comprehension exam. Now, if you've never taken the exam before, you're not really going to understand that one. The people that are in here that have taken the exam before can attest to what I am saying. It is a straight up, and here's the bad thing. If English is not your first speaking language, this is a English read like a lawyer exam. Now, here's what I recommend. If English is not your first language, when you sign up for the exam, see if they have it in your language. Okay? See if they have it in your language. All right? All right. Next, probably one of my favorites. Look at the big picture. As a manager would, ask yourself why, because they're going to get into the technical weeds. But this is what you got to do. You got to grab your head and take it out of the technical weeds. Ask yourself, well, why are we doing this? Go to the next higher level. Well, then why are we doing that? Go to the next higher level, like a manager would. Folks, it's all about the protection and the continuity of the business. Not how are we going to do it or maybe, but why are we doing it? But keep it simple. You're going to hear me say keep it simple throughout the whole entire week. And then the very last bullet point, which is an awesome one. Do you want to be right? Or do you want to be certified? Folks, I want you guys to be certified. Okay? Ricardo, do I think it is better in your language? Are you sure? Man, listen, I just know I've got some students that will go and do it in their own native tongue and they're successful because they have a hard time comprehension like English. Okay, so it's whatever you think is going to work best for you. Okay. Yeah, what's your question?
So, Joe, I was just wondering, do they ask any type of like a definition questions or something like that, or is it just gonna be
No,
like
well,
broad?
no, they could. They
They could.
definitely could. Yep.
And for those, we do have to like know their terms, right? Because they have a lot of terms, and that needs to be technically
Yeah, but
specific,
we're
right?
going to go through everything.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a very, very, very good success rate. Okay, so I'm going to give you everything that you need. This is the most important right here, though. Okay, now here's what I've seen on definitions. They got like maybe 6 terms. It's a drag and drop, and you got to drag the term to the definition. After we get done with all of this, okay, with this course, you should be able to knock anything like that out, no problem whatsoever.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. So what's going to happen is there's going to be a question that is going to pop up on this screen, and I want you to give me an answer. So here's the question. What is the first step in flipping a flapjack? Now, if you're not from the South, a flapjack's just a fancy word for a pancake. Give me some answers. What do you think is the first step in flipping a flapjack? Just throw some stuff out. So have a flapjack to flip. All right. Make sure it's cooked on one side. Okay. Have a spatula. Going to the store to buy the ingredients. Mateo, that's actually that's pretty close. That's good. That's the first before a lot of the other answers. Yep, I like it. I like it. But here's what we're going to do. Here we go. So make the flapjack batter, turn on the stove. Now we're getting some more people participating. I like it. Now listen, I'm going to tell you guys right now, this is how I do my class. If I see the same people are participating and because I love looking at patterns and whatnot, and I see that there's folks in here that are not interacting with me, I'm going to call on you just to let you know. And it's going to be very kind of maybe, oh, this person's not paying attention. Joe's calling them out, to ask a question. Hey, what do you think of this? And it's dead silence. Just to let you guys know, I want you to be successful. Okay, I'd already told you it's a participation class. All right, so Mateo, here's the answer. Plan. It's a management level exam. Now, even though I did not give you guys any answer choices, we got a plan. We got a plan. Now, you're go to the store to buy the ingredients. Yeah, that's part of it. Actually, all of y'all's answers would fit inside a plan. Folks, we can't do anything unless we have a plan. You got to prepare, you got to plan. Are you guys picking up what I'm putting down here? A lot of y'all's answers were more technical answers. This is a management level exam. All right, I've got one more question. And this one is going to be to show you got to read like a lawyer. You can only pick one answer, either fruit or color. An orange is a, you can only pick one answer. What is it? Is it A or B? See, we got a mix between both of the answers. This is where you have to read like a lawyer. The answer is A. But why is the answer A? There is a key word in that short and sweet question that makes fruit the correct answer. What is the key word? The word "in." They're looking for an object, okay? Now, folks, listen, I'm not doing this to try to discourage you on this exam and all that. Folks, if you did not understand and know, that's how the exam is going to be. You would not be prepared. You got to go in there with so many different hats on, okay? So before we take our first break, does anybody have any questions for me? All right, so our break is going to be 5 minutes. So what's going to happen is the splash screen is going to come up at the very bottom. It'll count down from 5 minutes to 0. Music's going to be playing in the background. Once that timer gets really close to 0, the music stops. You will see me, and we are going to start in your Mimeo day 1, security and risk management. All right, so we're going to jump into the Mimeo and get things kicked off. I will see you folks back in 5 minutes.
The future was wide open. They moved into a place they both could afford. He found a nightclub club, he could walk out the door. She had a guitar and she taught him some chords. The sky was the limit. Into the great wide open, under the skies of blue. Out in the great wide open, a rebel without a clue. The paper said and always play from the heart. He got an agent and a road in Bard. They made a record and it went in the charts. The sky was the limit. His leather jacket had changed as we jingle. They both made movie stars, party and mingle. There Ray and Armin say I don't hear a single. The future was wide open. Into the great wide open, under the skies of blue. Out in the great wide open, a rebel without a clue.
All right, before we get into the Mimeo, again, I'm going to be writing all on my screen. Okay, most of these slides I'm going to be writing on, or I'll highlight stuff. Just let everybody know I should have been a doctor. Okay, I'm just not that smart, but my handwriting is absolutely horrible. If I write something, I'm going to let you know what I've written. But if you missed it and you're like, Joe, what the heck is that on your screen? Ask me. You're not going to hurt my feelings. Ask me. I'll let you know. Also, remember, everything that you're going to see pretty much from this point forward, at the very end of each day, I'm going to convert it to a PDF and I'm going to give it to you. Okay, now, I have some students that they like the Mimeo, but they want to kick back and take their own notes, listen to my conversation and my stories and all that, and they don't fill in the Mimeo. But what they'll do is at the end of the day, once they get what I'm doing, they'll go back into the Mimeo and fill it out. Okay, folks, listen, however it is that you learn best, if you can keep up with me and type everything in the Mimeo, cool, do it if that is what works for you. If it doesn't work for you and you just want to sit back and listen, I'm giving you this stuff anyways. You do what works best for you. All right. So let's get into it. So again, we are on day one. So our plan of action today is we're going to get through domain 1 and domain 2. That's what we're going to do by the end of the day. Now, what I've written on the screen is a very, 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 very important topic that you're going to hear me say all week long. Security should be baked in. When do we bake stuff in? The beginning, the start, initiation, when we're planning, when we're preparing. Bake security in. Be proactive. Don't bolt it on. If you're bolted it on, you're just fixing problems. You're being reactive. You're not being cost effective. Always bake security in, no matter what it is, whether it's risk management, whether it's artificial intelligence. I'm sure a lot of you guys now are using AI stuff, whether it's artificial intelligence, whether it's building a network, it doesn't matter. Bake security in. Don't let it be an afterthought. Bake it in. Now, the 5 pillars of information security, we got the CIA triad, authenticity, and non-repudiation. So confidentiality is for protecting secrets. It's whatever secret that you want to protect. Now, what I want to do is underneath confidentiality, integrity, availability, I'm just going to give you a couple of examples, not everything because we have the whole entire course. But so, for example, encryption. Specifically symmetric. Now, we'll talk about cryptography tomorrow after lunch and on Wednesday. So we'll dive a little bit deeper into cryptography. So that upholds confidentiality. Let's do authentication, like multi-factor authentication. And if you're like, whoa, how does that uphold confidentiality? Well, I shut my laptop down at the very end of the day. Or in your work area, if you were to leave your computer and it was still, on, I bet you have a policy that says if you leave your desk, your cubicle, your office, you're supposed to lock your machine. Well, if somebody does not know your authentication factor, your identification and authentication factor, they can't get into your system. Upholds confidentiality. We'll talk a lot more about this stuff as we go on. By the way, since I'm going to be throwing out a lot of acronyms, you're going to see a lot of acronyms throughout this course, books that you might read, practice test questions that you might do. Let me tell you something really awesome. On the exam, they will spell out the acronym. So instead of MFA, they will say multi-factor authentication. They may not give you the definition. They will just say multi-factor authentication instead of just MFA. So what I'm telling you is you do not have to memorize acronyms for this exam, which is a good thing. That's a really good thing. All right, integrity. Integrity is protecting the accuracy and reliability. The accuracy and authenticity. It's making sure that data is what data should be. So let me give you a couple of examples. A hash, or we can call it a message digest. We'll talk more about those on Wednesday. It's going to be a lot of fun. If I see quality assurance, QA, quality assurance, that's about our processes, the integrity of our processes. We'll talk about quality assurance and domain 2, plus we're going to bring it back in tomorrow when we talk about the capability maturity model integration. It's about the integrity of our processes. Eric, BOM, what do you mean by BOM? Yep, so they'll spell out bill of materials. Or if we're talking about like an SBOM software bill of materials, they'll have it spelled out. Yep. All right, availability is protecting the stability and reliability of the system. Actually, I'm going to give you more of an ISC square definition in the chat window of availability. So availability is having those resources, those objects, during the time that authorized users need them. What availability is not is that a system is available 24/7. No, not on this exam. It needs to be available when authorized users, after they've been identified, after they have authenticated, and then when authorization kicks in based on need to know least privilege principles, I want that resource available. Now, some security controls we can use, and I'm just going to throw out a couple of them. Like, for instance, my HVAC system is on right now because it's a little warm where I'm at. So an HVAC, like in your data center, UPSs, uninterruptible power supplies, we'll talk about those later. Actually, later on today, we'll bring them back up again on Wednesday. Backups, your data backups, business continuity plans, disaster recovery plans, all that stuff revolves around availability. Now, authenticity is ensuring that any information communication is coming from a trusted source, and we can trust it, and we know that we can trust it. Now, their example of that is a proof of origin. So what they're talking about there on proof of origin, it's where we are using asymmetric, and we're using public-private key pairs. And it is a form of authenticity, or it's a form of authentication. If you're using pass keys out on the internet for logins that you got out on the internet, that's a proof of origin. Those of you that are using CACs, your common access cards or PIV cards, that's proof of origin. We will go over how that stuff works on Wednesday. On Wednesday. And then we've got non-repudiation. Non-repudiation. So this is where a subject cannot deny, depending on how we're using it, cannot deny that they sent a message and or what was said in the message, or even on the recipient. The recipient cannot deny that they received the message, or that once they received it, they didn't alter it at that point in time. Now, whenever I see non-repudiation, here's one of the very first security controls that pops up into my head. Is a digital signature. And again, with digital signatures, we're using asymmetric public-private key pairs. We will talk how that stuff works on Wednesday. It's going to be a lot of fun. Basically, what it revolves around is to make sure that, accountability is kept up. You can't, if you're committing fraud, you can't deny what you were doing. Folks, speaking of fraud, if you're taking notes, I want you to write this down. When it comes to fraud on this exam, malicious intent, which fraud is malicious intent, you need to stop it because that could have a large negative impact. There's somebody out there that wants to cause harm. So if I see an answer that has anything about fraud or where there's any malicious activity that's going on, I'm like, oh man, that could be a big negative impact on my organization and I need to stop it. All right, and the last part of the slide is the DAD. This is the bad part of the CIA triad. So, the first D stands for disclosure. Folks, if you see the word disclosure, let's say in a question, you better make sure that your answer deals with upholding confidentiality. If you see the term alteration, they want you to uphold integrity. Now listen, you're going to see there's a lot of synonyms that I can throw out for this. Tampering, manipulation, manipulate, alteration. They want you to uphold integrity. And the last D is destruction, but we got to be very careful with the term destruction. If you're using destruction in a negative way, they want you to uphold availability. If they're using that term destruction in a negative way. For example, a couple of weeks ago, heck, I even forget when it was because it wasn't that big of a deal, but there was a tropical storm depression that was heading our way to Houston. Bertha, tropical storm Bertha. Heck, we didn't even get a single drop of rain, I don't think, where I was at. Okay, but that could have destroyed my house, which my office is in my house to take away my availability. That is negative. Now, listen, if they're using the term destruction in a positive way, they want you to uphold confidentiality. So let me repeat that again. If they are using the term destruction or destroy in a positive way, they want you to uphold confidentiality. Because you're going to see once we hit domain 2, before we end class today, there's the data life cycle. The very last phase, which is phase 6 of the data life cycle, is destroy. Confidentiality. We're destroying the data because we no longer need it, but that upholds confidentiality. So be very careful with that term destruction. All right, next, security needs technology, but it also needs people. Now, when security needs technology, we need to do this. Keep it simple. But why? Because security needs people. What is the weakest link in security? It's people. Always has been, always will be. All right, so let's look at that. Let's look at that. Now, we're going to talk about assets here in just a little bit, but I'm going to bring it up now because it's really important. An asset is anything worth value to your organization. So here's a question for you guys. Where you work, what is your organization's number one asset? Does anybody know?
People,
What is
users, people.
it's your people. Whether you believe it or not, it's your people. Think about it. Where you work, okay? If they didn't have people, there wouldn't be a business. Heck, there wouldn't be the government. People are our number one asset, okay? So you got to remember that for the exam. But you also have to remember there's a negative side of it. Your insiders, your people are also your number one threat. Now, we can look at that in two different ways. Number one is they could be a malicious threat. If they'll go into the organization, let's say, Neil, let's say you found out for some weird reason you're about to be terminated. And you're like, oh man, you know what? Forget this company. And you start doing, malicious stuff. Well, depending on what elevated privileges that you might have and whatnot, you could cause a lot of damage to that organization. That would be a malicious insider threat. But let's say, Neil, no, you're just working away. You love your job. I mean, folks, I love to teach. I don't even like calling teaching a job. It's a passion. I love to teach. But do I make mistakes? Am I human? Yeah, I don't mean to, but I make mistakes. So your people are your number one asset, but they're also the number one threat. All right, here's my next question. Does anybody know on this exam, and even where you work, what's your number two asset? It is your data. It is your data, whether it's intellectual property or whatever, it's your data. Think about your company. If you were not doing any kind of backups whatsoever and you lost all of your data, even the government, what type of an impact would that have on the organization? A big one. A big one. Okay? So, remember, people are the weakest link in security. Here are 4 different ways that we can respond to people being the weakest link in security. Training. You guys are in a training class right now. Education. If you go in, let's say, get a degree in cybersecurity, that's education. Awareness. Awareness is where they got like newsletters, posters maybe put up, the phishing campaigns that you have within your organization. That's awareness. And the 4th one is automation. Now, why is automation a response to people being the weakest link in security? Well, if we're automating something, if there is a task that has to be done that's very complex, or even not even that complex, let's say, for example, if it wasn't for my Shark robot vacuum cleaner, my house would never be vacuumed. My wife sure as the heck isn't going to do it. I do it every once in a while, okay? But that Shark vacuum, I have it automated, and it goes and it does its thing. What did that Shark vacuum cleaner take away? It took away me, the human. Okay, so that's where automation comes in. It's just when we go and set up the automation, whoever's setting up that automation, we just don't set up the automation and then roll it out to production. Nah, we got to go and verify it. We want somebody else to test out that automation in a test environment. Once it tests good, we roll it out to production and then we validate it. Just because it worked the right way in a test environment does not mean it's going to work the right way in production. So we want to validate it. Are we getting a good return on that investment? Okay, so those are the 4 different ways that we can respond to people being the weakest link in security. All right, folks, what was on the previous slide? All of that stuff. And at the very top of this slide, You're going to hear me talk about that over and over and over and over again all week long. All right, next we got our organizational roles. So your board of directors, your BOD, they're going to go and hire your CEO. By the way, your CEO is the top executive management officer within an organization. Okay, but then you got your board of directors that are kind of up and over that CEO. But they also assess the overall direction and strategy of the business. What are we doing to make money? They assess that. What are we doing to make money? Now, if you are a publicly traded company, the board of directors has to go and get together an audit committee. That audit committee is going to oversee the financial reporting and disclosures up to the SEC, the government. Does anybody know what law is that if you're a publicly traded company, you have to have an audit committee that oversees your reporting and disclosures? Yeah, Eric, that's Sarbanes-Oxley. Does anybody know why Sarbanes-Oxley even came about? If you're old enough, I guarantee you, in some way, shape, or form, you were affected. Because of Enron, Yelp, MCI, WorldCom, Arthur Andersen accounting firm, okay? Enron lied, their CEO and CFO lied to all their investors. There's a lot of people, even me. I was working at Bell Wireless. A lot of the 401 that they had was tied up into Enron. We lost all of that money that was tied up into Enron. It was crazy. All right, let's look at auditing real quick. Here's what I want you to know. We're going to go over just the very basics of auditing right now, but you're going to hear me say it throughout class. So here's the basics. If you want somebody to trust what you are telling them, you do not audit yourself. Why? Somebody else is going to do the audit, but why don't you audit yourself? Well, conflict of interest. You could be fraudulent in what you're saying. Now, if you're doing an internal assessment, an internal audit, let's say with your specific department still does not audit itself for the actual audit. Another department will come in and perform the audit. If, let's say, your customer, let's say that you're a government contractor, and the government wants to trust what you are telling them, you're going to do a third-party audit. A third party will come in and perform the audit on your organization. What that is going to do, whether it's an internal, up to senior management, or an external, that audit will give assurance that whatever we're claiming, we're being honest, we're being truthful. Now, if some of you are thinking, but Joe, we do our own internal assessments. Well, no, I get it. I mean, are you going to do your own internal audit or assessment before I'm talking the actual audit itself? No, absolutely. I'll do my own internal stuff. I'm talking about the actual audit itself. We do not audit ourselves. It's called separation of duties. Separation of duties is really important. All right, that's one example. Next, senior management. You're going to see me point up to the sky quite often throughout class. Senior management's the upper strata of the org. They dictate policy. All policies on this exam comes from senior management. They make the financial decisions for the organization. They are the ones that are ultimately accountable, them and the board of directors, for anything and everything that happens within the organization. Now, roles include your president, vice president, but let's look at these C levels. Remember, your CEO is the top management officer. You got your CEO, COO, chief information officer, chief security officer, chief financial officer. You got a chief information security officer, chief risk officer, chief marketing officer. I mean, there's so many different C levels that are out there. It gets a little ridiculous. All right, I've got a question for you guys. I've got a question. Listen very carefully to my question. When we're talking about the C levels, In an organization, that chief information security officer, the CISO, in an organization, what C-level does that CISO directly report to? Give me some answers. What do you think? All right. So I like the answer. I like the answers that says it depends. It depends on the organization and the chain of command and the structure of the organization. Yeah, it depends. I've seen where some CISOs report directly to the chief security officer. I've seen some where they report directly to the chief information officer. I've seen some where they report directly to the chief operation officer. I've seen some where they report directly to the board of directors or even the CEO. It depends. Folks, what I'm getting at here is this. If it's not always true, it's wrong. Okay? Those of you that were giving me very specific C levels, maybe in your organization, that's how it works, but that's not always true across every organization. Okay, I'm going to reword my question. Listen very carefully to my question. In an organization, when it comes to these C levels, who does the chief information security officer ultimately report to? What's the answer? Now we can give a definite answer. The answer to that is the chief executive officer, the CEO. Did you see, though, where I changed my verbiage between the two different questions? My first question, I said directly reports to, and my second question was ultimately reports to. Are you guys picking up what I'm putting down here? Okay, folks, this is going to be a reading comprehension exam. Watch out for those that little bitty verbiage where it can completely change everything. Okay, so just be very careful. All right, next, security professionals. That's who we are. That's who we are on this exam. So let's look at what it says there. You need good persuasion skills and you strengthen numbers. Let's stop right there. Why do we need good persuasion skills? Well, first off, we are not there to fix the problem. That's not our job. You have to remember that on the exam. Even though we're security professionals, we're management. Not senior management, but management, okay? We're there to persuade senior management based on us being security champions, on our experience. But why do we need strength in numbers? Because it's an example of separation of duties. One security professional could be fraudulent, but if I got multiple security professionals that are saying the same thing, then, the chances of there anything being fraudulent happening are a lot lower. Not saying impossible. Next, security policies apply to everyone. Let's look at that everyone. First off, policies are mandatory. We're going to talk about policies later on today. Everybody in the organization has to follow policies on this exam. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, okay? They're mandatory. It says security policies apply to everyone. Does that include the board of directors? Do they have to follow security policies? Yep. I mean, basically the policies is coming from senior management board of directors. Yeah, they got to follow their own policies. Does that apply to us, the security professionals? Yes. Does that apply to, let's say, the janitorial staff? Yes. Does that apply to a contractor that's coming into the business? Yes. All of that fits inside of everyone. Now, again, a security champion, and it says it's a project manager or team lead. Really, I mean, it's anybody that has a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, they're baking security in. That's a security champion. Next, we got our information owner, data controller. I'm going to highlight data owner. And on this same slide, I'm going to highlight the word custodians. Now, the reason why I am highlighting those two and not anything else really is to let you know this. The chances of everybody in here getting a question on the difference between the data owner and custodian is extremely high. That's why. Now, I didn't say that you're not going to get a question on the other verbiage. I'm just saying between the data owner and the custodian, it's going to be really high. Now, that information owner, data controller, they are accountable for the assets. Basically, every different business unit division is going to have their own data owner, but folks, every organization has one main data owner for that company. Typically, it's the chief information officer or the chief information security officer. It's one of your C levels, but typically it's one of those two. Now, they've got 3 different things that they got to do to the data. Now, on this exam, anytime we're talking about data and we need to know who do we need to listen to or who do we need to go and ask questions, it goes to the data owner. But then again, each business unit division can have their own data owner as well, but they get what they need to from the main data owner. So they must identify the asset. Remember, your data is your number 2 asset. We got to have an asset inventory of what data is needed. Only collect and process the data that it's required. Number 2, they're going to go and classify the assets. Folks, anytime we see classification, we could also be talking about clearances, but here with data, the objects get classified by the owner. On the CIA triad, that upholds confidentiality. Top secret, secret. Like if I got a secret clearance and there is a top secret classified piece of data, can I go and read that top secret classified data if I have a secret clearance? No. Upholds confidentiality. But on the exam, the owner is who classifies the data. And 3, they determine the access permissions for the asset. Now, they might not go into, let's say, Microsoft or Apple or whatever and do the actual permission settings themselves, but they determine who can access what assets, what data. Now, your information, your data steward, also your data processor, they're responsible for the data quality, the content, the context, the oversight. They're looking at the associated business rules. They're looking at the data from a business perspective, but they're responsible for that data, but from a business perspective. So let me give you an example. Does anybody know what do we have to conform to? It is a contract if we are processing credit or debit card information. Yeah, Nick, PCI DSS. So that data steward is going to make sure that we are upholding those 12 requirements. They're responsible for that. Now, your custodians, your system owners, think of your custodians as your admins, your IT department. They implement the security controls. They are responsible for the assets. They perform day-to-day tasks. They implement the security controls to uphold confidentiality, integrity, availability. They perform the data backups according to our recovery point objective that we will talk about at the very end of Domain 1. They're doing things on the data that are the technical things on the data. So again, make sure you just understand the basic difference between the owner, the data owner, and the custodian. The chances of you getting a question on that are pretty high. Now, in the chat window, I want you to know the difference between the term accountability and the term responsibility. So accountability can never be delegated. That's going up to the board of directors, senior management. Remember, your main data owner is somebody from senior management, typically your chief information officer, your chief information security officer. Accountability cannot be delegated. Anything that happens in the organization, they are ultimately accountable for everything that happens in the organization, even with the data. Responsibility can be delegated. All right, a third-party relationship manager. So this is going to be a department, maybe a group or a department within your organization. And what they do is they go and manage any third-party relationships, any vendors that we have or contractors, outsourcers, service providers. So let me give you an example. When I worked at Dow Chemical, there was a guy that I worked with. His name was Larry. Larry'd been there for about 150 years. One of his sons owned a pipe fitting company in the Freeport, Texas area that contracted to Dow Chemical. If my department, we needed a pipe fitter to come in and do some contract work for us, would it be ethical, rule number 2 on my secret sauce, would it be ethical if my department awarded that contract to Larry's son's business? Would that be ethical of us to do? No. It's a conflict of interest. No. So Dow Chemical had that third-party relationship manager. What we did is and listen to how I'm going to explain this. This is really important. They are going to choose based on, here's the important part, based on whatever is aligned to Dow Chemical's business goals and business objectives, what's going to best fit Dow Chemical. Now, what we did is we submitted a request to that third-party relationship manager. Said, hey, here's, we need a pipe fitting contractor to come in. Here's the statement of work, the SOW. Here's the work that needs to be done. But we also put in there, we would like for this company to be the contractor. And here's the reason why. And by the way, Larry's son, his company actually did the best job. They were reliable. They came in on time. Often they came in, within the budget that was given. So they were really good. All right. But we disclosed to the third-party relationship manager, the guy who owns the company, his father works for Dow Chemical, specifically our department. But at that point in time, it was out of our hands. That third-party relationship manager went and got multiple different bids. And based on what was aligned best to Dow Chemical's business goals and business objective, whatever the ultimate business strategy was, that's who won the contract. Now let's add 2 things off to the right of the third-party relationship manager. What they're going to do, especially if it's an outsourcer or a service provider, they're going to make sure that there is a service, that we get a service level agreement from that service provider, from that outsourcer. What that service level agreement is going to do is it is going to provide us with, all right, well, what is their responsiveness going to be? What is their performance going to be? And what is their availability going to be? And it'll outline if they don't live up to that contract, here's what we get in return. On the CIA triad, SLAs revolve around availability. Another thing that they're going to do before they even start talking with the vendor, the contractor, the outsourcer, and the service provider, before they even start talking about the details, there's going to be another document that they are going to make that third party sign before we talk about anything that says, whatever you hear, whatever we talk about, whatever we do, you keep your mouth shut. And if not, we're going to sue you. Folks, what document am I talking about? Yes, an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. And on the CIA triad, an NDA revolves around confidentiality. Yeah, so they can still, with my example of Larry's son, he actually won a lot of those contracts. But what it did is it took us, the conflict of interest, out of that equation. And that third-party relationship manager did it based on what was best aligned to Dow Chemical's business goals, business objectives. And now there's not a conflict of interest. All right, auditors, they're going to check for compliance. Now, we already talked about auditing. An auditor is going to bring an outside scope or perspective. Now, remember, it could be an internal audit, it could be an external. But if it's internal, it needs to be from a different department. Now, remember that audit and those auditors, what they are going to do is they give either senior management or a third party like our customer, it gives them assurance that what we are actually telling them is truth. We're not being fraudulent. Users, you guys, me, we can take the assets home. Like, for example, your enterprise workstation, your laptop. You get to take it home, but you got to keep them secure. Folks, remember, people are the weakest link in security. How do we combat that? Training, education, awareness, automation. So let me give you an example. Now, this happened about a good 23 so years ago. The VA, if I got any veterans in here that deal with the Veterans Affairs and all that, okay? So the VA, and it was out of, I believe it was Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, which was the regional headquarters for the VA that I was at that point in time. The database admin had their own laptop, and it was a contractor, but the VA issued them their own laptop, and they had a copy of one of the databases on that laptop. This is what they did. After work, they met their family at the local Applebee's in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, but the guy put the laptop in the back seat of his car. Not like a laptop bag or anything like that, not even inside of, the trunk. He laid his laptop in the back seat of the car. And I'm like, yeah, that's dumb. I mean, anybody walking by, there's a laptop. Let's break the window and steal it. That's exactly what happened. That guy did not take security seriously. Not only that, because my information got leaked out, because I received a document in the mail from the VA a couple of months later saying that an incident happened. My PHI and PI information was leaked out, and they paid for like 2 years worth of LifeLock service for me. Okay. But that also told me the VA themselves did not take security seriously. They did not bake any security in. Folks, can anybody tell me on that laptop what was not enabled? Because whoever stole the laptop was able to get data off of the hard drive. Not multi-factor authentication, encryption. They did not have BitLocker enabled. They didn't have full disk encryption. So what they did is they actually just took the hard drive out of that laptop, plugged it in externally someplace else, and was able to scrape that drive and get information off of that drive because it wasn't encrypted. That tells me the VA did not have any policies in place to push down to those laptops to enable BitLocker. So the VA did not take security seriously, and it ended up costing them a lot of money. It actually cost us, the taxpayers, a lot of money. Mateo, is it always compliance referring to be compliant with company policy, even when policies need to be compliant with the security framework? Yeah, I mean, we got to be with whatever senior management gives us, whether it's a policy, whether it's a standard that we got to follow, or let's say an ISO 27001, which we'll talk about that later on. If we need to be in compliance with that, it's whatever is the requirement is that everybody must follow. Yeah, that's compliance. All right, next, the difference between due care and due diligence. So due care is setting best or reasonable practices as an organization or responsible organization, or even you should. Basically, due care is you're doing the right thing. I like to call due care due correct. Let me give you 2 examples, just real quick. Senior management having policies that everybody in the organization, because they're mandatory, must follow. That's an example of due care. Senior management did the right thing. Here's a technical example of due care. On my network rack, I'm going to be showing you a lot of this stuff later on this week. This guy right here. Now, if I got people that know Ubiquiti, I love Ubiquiti. Okay, I'm going to be showing you a lot of stuff this week. This is my next gen firewall, my unified threat management. What this device is It's my router, it's my firewall, it's my network intrusion prevention system. It does malware scanning. There's honeypots that are in there. It does deep content inspections, looks at my data flows. It does a lot of stuff for me, okay? Does a lot of stuff. This is the fiber modem coming from my internet service provider. When they installed that, I connected it, and it's connected right there with that white cable to this firewall. I did not connect it directly to my laptop. I connected it directly to that firewall. That's due care. I did the right thing. Now, how do I know that I did the right thing? Folks, every firewall by default ingress coming in has a default policy of what? If you didn't know, I told you guys a little bit earlier. Deny all. That is due care. I did the right thing. That's due care. Due diligence is providing a record or history of compliance, continuous enforcement. You are providing evidence of your due care. I like to call due diligence due detect. Basically, it's the ability to prove your due care. So let me give you an example. Folks, just because senior management has a policy and everybody signed off on that policy that they're going to follow it, does that mean that everybody's actually going to follow the policy? No. People are the weakest link in security. So what do? We're always doing our continuous monitoring. We're logging stuff. We got audit trails, okay? We got proof. And if somebody's not following policy, we can go and correct it. Mateo, you're not following policy. You need to go through another training program. That's due diligence. Yeah, that's due diligence. All right, let's go back to my unified threat management. That was my due care. I went and set that up. I went and programmed it. I set up all the policies that were inside of it. That's my due care. But how do I know that that firewall is actually doing its job? Could I have made a mistake whenever I went and configured it? Yes. I'm doing my continuous monitoring. It's monitoring itself. It sets up notifications for me and whatnot. I could have made a mistake. Not only that, can anybody tell me with that, any kind of techie stuff that we have, whether it's our routers, firewalls, switches, computers, software, operating systems, it doesn't matter. There is a major vulnerability that they all have. We just don't know about it. Does anybody know what those are called? The unknown vulnerabilities that all of that techie stuff has? Yes, 0 days. Those have 0 days. I just don't know what they are. They all have 0 days. Just don't know what they are. So your due diligence is doing your continuous monitoring. I'm always monitoring that stuff. Now, what due diligence? Like doing your audits and all that. What it provides senior management or a third party that wants to trust us is assurance. Folks, I believe that is now the third time just within this hour when we've been talking about auditing and all that, I have thrown out that word assurance. Just to let you know. Folks, you're going to see there's a lot of things I might be repetitive on. And if I do start getting repetitive, write that down. That might be a basic concept that you need to understand for the exam. All right, let's stop right there. It's the top of the hour. We are going to take a 10-minute break. A 10-minute break. Before we do that, does anybody have any questions or comments for me?
So when we spoke about due diligence, and you said that it's due detect, are we talking about it from like a proactive manner? Because
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
so that's going to be like your proactive setup. Like that's where you do your due
Yeah,
diligence.
so I'm not going to wait for something bad to happen, you know, on my networking equipment. You'd be like, oh, something bad happened. Let me go and react to it and try to fix it. Or even let's say with policies, I'm always doing my continuous monitoring. I've got systems set up that are scanning things, and if anything weird is happening, any anomalies or whatever, it sends a notification to my phone that says, hey, something's going on. And since I have that network intrusion prevention system, it'll hopefully, if it's a threat, it'll stop it. But I'm always looking at my data flows, and I'm going to show you this as we go on throughout the week. Is there something on my network, like an IoT device, that's communicated off of my network to a country that I do not want it to communicate with? Did I have a policy set up to stop that? If not, I can go and set up that. I can go in and react to that policy and set one up. So it's not like I have it set up and I'm just sitting back, just waiting. I mean, you can be reactive, but we can use that by using reactive controls that will react to certain threats, but you're doing that in a proactive way. So hopefully you understand that.
Yep.
It's not like I'm just sitting around waiting for something bad to happen. No, I'm automating where there's scanning that's happening on my network, and it's trying to find, I could have missed something. It's trying to find something to react to it, but I'm using that scanning technique in a proactive way.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I'll see you folks back in 10 minutes.
Into the grave.